One of the items I'm frequently asked about is creating rounded or curved corners around boxes in web or mobile applications. And that's actually accomplished with the border radius CSS rule. Now then comes the question, does border radius work in mobile? There's a great website called caniuse.com. And caniuse will break down each CSS rule by individual browser and show you what's available in that browser and for which version. So we're looking at CSS border radius here on the caniuse website. And you'll notice here, here's the current version, and below that, we've got near future. So if we look at what's current as of this taping, and we go down here to the mobile section, we see iOS handles it. Opera Mini does not. Android, BlackBerry, Opera, etc. all do. So there's a good chance that border radius will be supported by our user's browser. I've already gone ahead and created an application called Edge Shadow. And this is an Android application. And we're going to demonstrate how we create the curved edges or the border radiuses as well as the shadows. So I'm going to go ahead, we're going to edit our initial index.html. And of course, there's all the stuff that's put in there initially by the actual template for PhoneGap. We'll take that out, and then we'll go ahead and demonstrate how border radius looks on an actual device. All right, so our text editor is starting up here. In the meantime, I'll also get Eclipse started. So this way, we can put our work right into Eclipse as soon as it's ready. All right, so we'll get Eclipse going there, and here's our text editor. And in our text editor, we obviously want to open the file from our project. So let's go ahead and do that. We don't need that guy. So from Edge Shadow, go into Assets, the www folder, and in there is our index.html. And we'll go through and remove what is not needed, leaving the meta tags here. We could change this title from Hello World to something else that makes us feel good. So it's called Edges and Shadows. We can take out all of that. We want to leave in the Cordova. And I like to move that to the head. Just like that. All right. So looks like now we're ready to go. So what I'm going to do here is I'll put in just a div, and we'll ID this as box, just for lack of a better term. Now we'll go ahead and put in box a little bit of dummy text, just so we have something to force a height and enable us to style it as an actual box. And we actually can start here by working in just the regular browser and then test it if we want on the device. That's a kind of frequent way to work when you're doing this that makes things just a little bit easier. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on word wrap so that's a little easier to see, just like that. Okay, so now right now, by default, we can look at this in any of our desktop browsers, and we can see, of course, there's no styling applied whatsoever. It's just going to look like a paragraph without any styling. As soon as our browser comes up there we go, there's Firefox. And that's what we get. Looks like we're still using one of our style sheets there. Yeah, we still got this style sheet attached. Let's actually take that style sheet out, and let's refresh it in our browser, and it'll have that kind of more natural look. There we go. Perfect. It's exactly what we expected. So now let's go ahead and style our box a little bit. So we'll go ahead and just embed the style sheet here. And we'll use box to call it. All right, so we've got our selector. We're selecting the ID box. And first, let's set the width to 300 pixels. And let's set the font size to 0.7em. Now we'll immediately see a difference here when I refresh, just like that. Now to make our box even more pronounced, we can set a background color. And I don't know, let's set RGB 115, 2176. I have no idea what color that is, but we're about to find out. Background color, oops, RGB. Got to spell those things correctly. All right, so we got kind of a deep crimson there. So now we could even put a line around it so we can see that distinctly as well. So let's do border 1 pixel solid black. And let's make it 2 pixels just so it's a little more visible. All right, so there's our box. Now, to add the border radius, we're going to, of course, use the border radius rules. The problem is that border radius is not yet universal. So we have to do it like this. Border radius. And now, let's say we want the border radius to be 5 pixels, meaning it's going to be 5 pixels all the way around. We could also separate this into border radius top, left, right, etc. All right, so let's take a look with just that rule set, how we did. And see we got a very kind of small curve. Let's go ahead and increase that to 15 and curve it even more. So now we have something nice and round. Now, just to be safe, it's recommended that we also use -Mozilla border radius. And that's in case our browser is looking for the specific Mozilla version or the specific WebKit version, in case it doesn't yet have the general border radius that we're putting in there. All right, so now, obviously, it's going to look the same in our desktop browser. Now, the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the width from 300 pixels to 75%. Now, obviously, this will have an effect here in this browser. But in a mobile device, obviously, this would not be variable because a mobile device only has a single width in our application. All right, so we've got our index. Let's go ahead and now build our application in Eclipse. So we're going to go ahead and create File, New, Project. We're going to choose the project from existing code. You guys should be good at this by now. Root directory from our desktop is going to be the Edge shadow. And we'll bring in that app. I want to run this in a specific one of my Android emulators. So I'm going to create a debug configuration here. Debug it as an Android application. So the project, Edge and Shadow, and the target, I'm going to use Intel 2, which is our optimized Intel-based device. And I forgot to make the one change to get rid of the errors in the manifest. So we're going to right-click on our project name, choose Properties, and when that comes up, we'll choose the Android Properties. There we go, Android, and we're going to target 4.1.2. And now we should be able to run in our debug configuration. Looks like we need to do a project clean to get rid of those errors, and that just rebuilds everything. There we go, no errors anymore, none of those little red stop signs. So now we're launching, and we'll be able to see our curved box inside the actual browser. And there you see our application and the curved edges running in the device. We actually could improve that just a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change here the width to 80, let's go 90%. And let's also, let's leave it like that. All right, and we'll build it one more time here in Eclipse. Click our bug for debug mode. And there you can see the logical division displayed with the slight change I made. All right, so let's go back to the code, and we're also going to add some drop shadow code. And adding a drop shadow actually is slightly more complex than you may be guessing. So we're going to add box shadow. And first we're going to say, okay, what's the horizontal shadow? Let's go for 10 pixels. Then the vertical shadow, let's do 10 pixels. And then how much blur we want. Let's go 5 pixels worth of blur. And then finally, it wants to know the color of the shadow. So let's go with a gray like 888888, kind of a medium gray. All right, so if we take a look at this in a traditional desktop browser, you can see the shadow kind of hugging the right and bottom nicely. We could reduce the size of the shadow by reducing these numbers for, let's say, 5 and 5. I like my shadows a little more understated. I'm no designer, but there you can see it's a little tighter right there. All right, so let's try this version in Eclipse in our emulator. So we'll get that running, and we'll pull up our emulator. There it is. And that should pop up in just a moment. And there you can see in the mobile browser, we actually don't get the drop shadow in this particular version. And we could try this, for example, in browsers within here, and we might get it. Or we could try it actually in iOS, and we might get a different result. The good thing about these particular types of styles is that they don't affect the user's experience if they don't work in the individual version that you're using. So perhaps this will be supported in the future in Android, but this is just one of the many things that's going to be inconsistent across browser to browser and across application version to application version when you're doing HTML5.